this is like a great like topic to just get into. So many people want to know about what goes on in middle school, and they want to know about restorative justice. And me having the opportunity to go to different schools in the area and throughout the state, and I'm talking to different teachers and I'm talking to different parents, this is a topic that just always comes up. And
Yes.
it's just like, who is the person to talk to about this? And like you are the person. You know it all. You have such your experience is just
I
it's
don't. My
phenomenal.
experience has been hard won, fought, but like we say in RJ, like we never arrive. We're in a constant state of arriving, and
Yeah.
just keeps us grounded because we don't have it all figured out. But like we say, it's hard work, but it's heart work. And when
Right.
it's heart work, you're willing to go the extra mile. You're willing to do what others aren't willing to do. And I think that makes a difference.
That's awesome. So we want to like really understand like the changing middle school student, creating boundaries and navigating conflict, and how do families and caregivers, navigate like the social and emotional changes. So, can you tell us what is restorative justice?
Sure. So, quite simply, restorative justice is a philosophy, right? It's a belief that when we are in relationship with one another, we are less likely to cause harm to one another because I like to give examples. If I come to your home and I eat your snacks and I play with your dog, and maybe one of your siblings is home from school and I get to interact with your siblings and family members, and we're watching TV and we're just having a really good time with one another, connecting. I am less likely to then go to school on Monday and spread a vicious rumor about you. So it's about building and nurturing relationships, building community. But we live in the real world, and I work in middle school. I mean, middle school is like ground zero of conflicts, right? We say that to the parents, 100% of your kids will be in a conflict. It's just going to happen. But when we've spent time building those relationships, we're more likely, or at least more willing, to want to repair the harm that has happened. And that, by and large, has been my experience. So, restorative justice is not a program. A lot of people like to refer to it as a program. It's not a program because it really is sort of the way you see the world. I've been teaching for a long time, and the thing that really kept me grounded in the classroom were my relationships with my students. Although I'm a history nerd and I would love to think that it was my engaging lessons and the way I made them think about something that they hadn't thought about previously that would keep my former students coming back and wanting to visit and wanting to stay in touch. And I was like, get real. It's not that. They don't remember your lesson on the Boston Tea Party. They don't remember that. They remember something about how you operated your class, how you made them feel, what connection you had to them. And that really is the heart of what we do, the connection and the relationship.
It's like when I think about it, I really used to think that restorative justice like it was a program, so it's funny that you say that because I was one of those people that actually thought about it. Now, is RJ, is it a requirement in all the schools? Do all the schools have to have it?
No. So what I can say is about 3 years ago, there was a bill it was Bill S2924, and it was a pilot program that was supposed to, I have the title here, Pilot Program Restorative and Transformative Justice Pilot Program, which was focused on reducing initial and repeat youth involvement with the youth justice system. I'm not sure where that is now. I know that the state of New Jersey does have an appetite for restorative justice. The only issue with it being a program, and why we are very careful to not describe it as a program, is because when something becomes a program, it almost becomes a mandate and a box that you check. And when I say that, I mean, when you're checking a box, it means, yep, we do that, check, done that. And it's not really done with fidelity. And so that's why we refer to it as a philosophy and a belief system. Because when you embody restorative justice, it comes out in how you teach, how you connect, how you view people, how you view conflict, and you're not trying to follow a script that says, okay, I do this and then I do this, check, I've done it. And there's no heart attached to it. A lot of different programs come to districts because it's the latest, greatest thing. It's the new shiny object. And, people want to be on the cutting edge of whatever the educational jargon is or whatever is in the zeitgeist at the time. But there's no follow through, there's no real implementation. So it doesn't last. And really, our work and what we want to do is make sure that the work of restorative justice is grounded, is taking root, is growing, but definitely not a program. We refer to it as an initiative.
Are there any RJ focus sessions on what parents and caregivers can, generally expect, like socially and emotionally, and like in a student's transition to middle school from elementary school?
Sure. So we have not done RJ focus sessions on that topic in particular. I know, I believe all three middle schools have sessions where they will invite parents in as a transition, like what to expect from elementary school to middle school, much like the high school brings the middle school parents, like what to expect as your child transitions to high school. But to your point, we have not had RJ focus sessions on that. We do have sessions where we call them family nights, where at the schools where RJ is in the district, we will invite the parents and the families in to sit circle and to experience what that is so that they can see what their children are being exposed to and experiencing in the schools where RJ is being implemented.
I sat circle at
Yes,
the RJ family night, and it
yes.
was it was great to see people like really open up about their feelings. And not everybody in the circle, of course, knew each other, but it was nice to just see what the students experience when they come into your classroom, and it was very inviting. The space is it's very comfortable, and you can see why students would open up in an atmosphere like that.
Thank you.
um yeah, it's fantastic. Your room is fabulous. um
Even like the color was intentionally
right.
chosen in order to be soothing, calming. The kids say when they cross the threshold, it's a vibe in here and they feel it. So it's I'm honored because not all places that have RJ, even in our district, actually have a dedicated space
Hmm.
where classrooms or classes can be invited in. Some of our RJ teachers actually have to push in to the existing elementary school classes, for example. So it really does make a difference. I know that space is at a premium in all of our buildings, so I really am very grateful.
That's fantastic. So what would you say, like in your experience, what's the biggest challenge socially that you've seen in middle school students?
Navigating friendships.
Oh.
The students usually say, we were all friends in elementary school. Like we liked each other, we got along. And then, like, something happens when you get to middle school. And I have a few theories about that. One is, you spend time getting to know the students in your elementary school and you're there, whether it's from grades 3 through 5 or kindergarten through fifth grade, depending on which school you went to. You spend time getting to know, and you know them over the course of many years. But then we have, I believe, 7 elementary schools in Montclair and 3 middle schools. So you have different students coming from various elementary schools, and they're funneling into one of the three middle schools. So it's not just the students that you went to elementary school with. So it's a larger pool of students. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I call this their midlife crisis year. So much like some adults do some things that are maybe out of character, out of, gets them out of sorts when they're approaching sort of a midlife, fork in the road. I believe that this time period, the sixth, seventh, and eighth grade time period, is similar for this age group, right? They're trying to figure it out. They want to be a little bit more independent. Their parents are giving them a little bit more independence. They are, coming into contact with other students. And we cannot forsake puberty. We just can't. Hormones are raging at this time. But navigating those friendships, those shifting alliances, tell students when they're having a problem with their friend group that, sometimes all friendships don't go the distance. And maybe you've reached the end of that relationship and maybe this friendship no longer serves you, right? But that's something that you'll have to determine. If this friendship continues to serve you, then by all means see what can be done to navigate it. But if the friendship no longer serves you, why hold on to something that is no longer beneficial to you?
Right. So are they do these social changes affect them emotionally? Like are they receptive to these changes? The students mostly? I mean, especially the ones in the lower grades.
Many times they're heartbroken, right? Because they're very social creatures, especially in middle school. It's about their social life, right? So you can say something to your child as a parent, hope that it sinks in, but if their friend group says it, they're more likely to latch on to it. So what I often say to parents is, you get them at home, I'll say the same message in school, and we're more likely to get an audience with them because they'll say, oh, that's what my mother said, or oh, that's what my father said, or something of that nature, right? So it starts to sink in. But their friend group, that's social currency, that's social capital. Everything revolves around their friendship. So they are really social at this age, and they're heartbroken when those friendships start going off the rails and they're not what they used to be. And that's it's a hard lesson for a lot of our students to grapple with, but one that we use as a teachable moment because we will tell them that these are the skills that you'll need to develop that will serve you as you are getting older and deciding who your squad is, who are the people that you want to surround yourself with, what friendships serve you, what you didn't particularly like in a friendship, and whether or not that should be allowed to persist. So these are really great lessons to gain, but they're painful, right? And sort of what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. And these are the things that they're having to come to terms with in this age group.
Middle school is such a transitional time.
Absolutely. Middle school is less. And so I'm currently a restorative justice teacher. I was a social studies teacher, history nerd, and I've seen it all. I've seen the shifting allegiances and alliances. I've seen the really close friendships in sixth grade that no longer exist by eighth grade. And like I said, it can be really heartbreaking to watch. But middle school is less about what they're learning and more about learning how to learn and grabbing those skills, learning how to study, learning how to advocate for yourself, right? I mentioned that this is a period where they start pushing back a little bit against families and want a little bit more independence and start asserting themselves in different ways. This is the time when they're testing out all of those things.
Carice, you've got a high schooler now and you've got a middle schooler. So you've kind of seen that, you're a little bit ahead of me. So you've kind of seen that transition. Like, Have you seen, those movements that Sarita's referring to?
I have so with the middle school, definitely with the pushing back, the defiance, and also with puberty, just navigating those changes, and also the friendship. So everything she's saying, I can relate to. But I did have a question. I know you got into Miss Carrington, your background. I was going to ask you because I also participated in the RJ session,
Yes.
and I found it very helpful with self-reflection. But I think it also takes a certain person to facilitate those type of sessions in order for people to actually gain something from it. So I think you're actually a perfect person to facilitate those sessions. So you got to a little bit of your background. I just was more curious about anything else you've done that's prepared you for.
I do appreciate that. And you are 100% correct. I will begin answering your question by saying this. When I was in middle school, I didn't know my teachers had first names. There was such a gulf between the teacher and the student. Like they were up here and revered, and you didn't know like anything about them. As far as we knew, they powered down at their desk at the end of the day and powered back up in the morning when they were, welcoming you back to class the next day. They weren't real. If you happen to run into them in the supermarket, you were like, you shop, right? Which is still kind of, it happens today because when I run into students and families in restaurants, I've run into them on vacation,
Wow.
the supermarket, right? It's like, what are you
They only know you in what capacity.
Exactly. But I will tell you this, to do this work, I like how you brought up self-reflection because there is a tremendous amount of self-reflection that has to go into this work. You have to be willing to be vulnerable and share what is appropriate, right? Like I'm not advocating for adults to open up, their entire lives and just spew, right? You've got to have a level of discernment to know what is appropriate to share. But I'm telling you, if you're willing to be vulnerable, it humanizes you and you can form connections with the students. When I got married, I brought my wedding pictures back and showed my wedding pictures and things. So you've got to be willing to open up pieces of yourself to allow the students to see, oh, you're not just an adult who has been there, done that, right? But you get me, you understand. So thank you for putting that into the space about self-reflection because that's a really big aspect of the work. You have got to be willing to look at yourself and say, okay, I didn't get that right. And I don't always get it right. Like I like to think I'm restorative, but I'm not restorative 24 hours a day. But the vulnerability, the self-reflection is huge in this work. And I think unfortunately for some adults who are hesitant to not necessarily engage in the work in the sense of how I do it in terms of being a circle keeper because there's, training and things of that nature. But I just think that there are some adults who just they want that wall of separation. I'm the adult, you're the child, and that is that.
Does that cause like a disconnect? Because it sounds like when you humanize yourself and you give them real life experiences, like when you speak of the things that's going on in your life, it allows for students to connect with you in a different way. If you say, I'm the teacher, you're the student, and you don't allow for that much space in between, how much growth is there going to be between, or growth and trust, to between that adult or that teacher and that student?
You are closing the door on a tremendous opportunity to connect with a young person. And that, in my view, that's sad because it doesn't take a lot to connect with young people. I am not the young, hip, cool teacher anymore. 19 years have gone by quickly. When I started, I was younger, I was hipper, I was cooler. I'm not anymore. My younger colleagues are occupying that position now. But what I do have is a wealth of experience. I have compassion, I have patience, and a willingness to connect. I stood in the hallway for an entire year when I was still in the classroom. teaching social studies before I was full-time RJ. I stood in the hallway for an entire year on the main floor and I spoke to every single student who walked by. And I would get, who is this woman? Like cringe wasn't the word back then, but whatever the word for cringe was,
You were
that's
it.
what I was. I was it. And I was undaunted. I was undaunted because what I do tell the kids today, I said, oh, by the way, I'm cringe and I don't care. And I
You
don't
were
care.
determined to connect.
Exactly. And this is what I would do. I would speak to them and say, "Oh, hey, oh my gosh, your sneakers are so cool. I love your braids are so cute. And oh, you colored your hair. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. Oh, I overheard you talking to your friends. Yes, I was ear hustling, but I overheard you talking about you were going to visit your grandparents over the weekend. How was your visit?" And I am telling you, I wore them down. So they no longer were walking past me, not making eye contact. Like now, when I say, "Oh, hey, so and so, good morning," a lot of them not necessarily would stop and speak to me, but give me that passing on the way, "Good morning." Like they were more willing to speak to me. And I'll give you this: if something happened in the hallway, let's say, like some knucklehead behavior, some horsing around, some play fighting, which it's like the root of all conflict in middle school. But let's say that happened and I had to intervene.
Hmm.
It was much easier for me to intervene because I had started developing those relationships. So they were more willing to stop what they were doing and listen because they're like, oh, like she's not just some adult who's out here barking orders. She talks to us. We have conversations. She's all right. So,
Yeah. So that trust is created.
exactly.
With the social changes and those shifts and those adjustments,
Yeah.
how much of that contributes to the conflict among the students? It's a loaded question.
Before social media,
Mm, mm.
I yes. Yeah, can we park here and talk about that for a moment?
Right, right.
So, yes, the social aspect of their friendships and the shifting allegiances and alliances and all that stuff has always been there. It was easier to navigate before social media. In the context of social media now, it makes my job exponentially harder. Because think about it, the three of us did not go to school in the age of social media. We didn't have our worst impulses and decisions recorded for the entire world to view on a nonstop loop,
Once it's
thankfully.
out there, it's out there.
Woo! Thankfully. But
Right.
unfortunately, this generation, where it's here. It's here. So we have to deal with it. But between the group texts that can have upwards of tens and tens of students on it, and they'll just add new students. And, most people have, numbers saved in their contacts. We've had to deal with group chats where no one has numbers saved in their contacts. And so they're anonymous. What's being said is vile and harmful and hurtful. And trying to untwist that Gordian knot is no small feat. And then, people being anonymous behind a keyboard on Instagram or, the other platforms. It's really hard. So that adds another layer. And a lot of times these things happen outside of school at a sleepover,
Mm,
kids hanging out uptown over the weekend. The school had nothing to do with it, but the school has to deal with it because it filters back into the school because all the kids are buzzing about it and because it creates such a substantial distraction to the school day and the school operations that the school has to deal with it. So whatever happened outside of school now has to be dealt with inside of school, even though the
mm.
school had nothing to do with it.
How do you find out about these conflicts? How does it get to the RJ circle?
I am very fortunate that at my school we have a very well-oiled procedure. The adults that I work with, whether they're in the counseling department or the admin department, or just, teachers that I have great relationships with. I will find out information through those channels, but I'll also find out information from the students themselves. So I'll give you an example. If two students, I'll give you an example, obviously no names. So two seventh graders last year woke up on the wrong side of the bed. We didn't know that at the time, but they got into a little something on the bus. They got into a scuffle outside of the bus. They were brought to the administration. In the administrator's office, they basically said to each other, like, this was dumb. This never should have happened. And so the administrator said, would you guys be willing to sit down with Miss Carrington in a restorative space and discuss, what happened and a path forward, et cetera, et cetera. Both of the students said yes. I confirmed with the students after their consequence, right? Because one of the misconceptions about RJ is that we're soft on consequences. We are not. We believe in consequences, right? Because we believe in students being accountable for their actions, right? We can't send them out into a world where there's no accountability. So both students agreed to sit down with me. It was the three of us, and it was enlightening. Both of them said that they woke up on the wrong side of the bed for different reasons. And I learned a little bit more about one student's family dynamic, which contributed to, going to school in a frame of mind that wasn't, ready for learning and absorbing, but was back at home and thinking about what was happening at home. And the other student was sort of, I don't know, unfortunately, maybe egged on by a crowd that started to build, because in middle school, as long as I'm not on the hot seat, somebody else is on the hot seat. I'm good with that. And they both said to one another that this never should have happened. And we don't force apologies in RJ, because that would be meaningless unless it comes from your heart. We say that the best apology is changed behavior, right? But both of them acknowledged the role that they played in getting them to where they were. And I asked them, well, what do you need from each other in order to move forward so that we're not back here again? And how can we chart a different path forward? And so they both said what they needed from one another. And they actually apologized to each other because that's what they wanted to do. Not because I steered them in that direction. I did not. I simply said, is there anything that you would like to say to so and so? Is there anything you would like to say to so and so? Did you hear what so and so said? Did you hear what so and so said? Right? So I'm in there sort of massaging, prompting, but not speaking, for them, allowing them to use their own voice. And it was very effective. Those two students have not gotten into any further, any further trouble, any further conflicts with one another. So that it could come to me that way through administrative route. It could come to me through counselors who meet with our students who then say, you know what, this sounds like maybe an RJ session could be had here. It's come to me from students who will knock on the door and say, I'm having a problem with my friend group. Is there a time in your day when we can all come? And then I'll say, okay, well, give me a little bit about what's going on. I would need to check with the rest of the friends to see if they would like to participate, because nobody is forced to participate. And if that's the case, then I'll put them on my schedule and they will come, and we will deal with their need in a restorative setting. But I've also had parents who have put things on my radar screen and said, hey, just wanted to introduce myself. My child is so and so, and they had a really great relationship with so and so child in elementary school, and that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And this is what I've noticed. And then, I'll try to elicit more information, perhaps talk to the two students and see if that's something they would like to resolve in a restorative setting. So I work with a great team, and it comes from many different angles. And I'm happy for that, because that means like people are buying into the process and what can be the result.
That's awesome because it sounds like, the students are comfortable enough to come to you and know that there's some type of resolution that you can assist with. It makes it so much easier. It makes the environment so much easier. And you mentioned the role that the administrators and other staff members play in the students' conflict and resolutions. So are they aware of well, of course they would be aware of the conflicts that's being discussed, but would there ever be the need of their support in your RJ sessions?
I've had RJ sessions where an administrator was in the session where families were involved. The student was invited to obviously participate. The families were invited to participate. An administrator was invited to participate. So that's a format that can happen. I've had sessions where just families and the students were involved and a teacher, and not an administrator. So any sort of combination is possible. We talk as a team to see what would be the best route to take in order to address the situation. Sometimes it might just be me sitting with the families and the students, or sometimes the administrator and a teacher in the family might be present, and me as well, in order just to guide the discussion. So all things are theoretically possible. It's just that we talk about what might be the best fit for a particular situation.
So when the students happen to come to you on their own and you find out through the students, is there anything that I guess rises to the level of you needing to have the parents notified that the students are in an RJ session, or are the parents notified before the students have to do an RJ session?
So it can happen in both of those circumstances. I'll give you another example. So there were seventh graders. There's something about seventh grade. I just
It's that
want
that middle
to know.
year.
Oh, it's like the middle child. No offense if either of you are middle children
I'm a
in your
middle child.
family, but seventh grade is like that stereotypical classic middle child syndrome, right? You're not the oldest, you're not the youngest, you're fighting to be seen. I'm in the middle, and even negative attention is still attention. So, a lot of negative attention is attached to our seventh graders. So, again, ripped from the headlines, seventh grade girls were being not nice to their teacher, talking about her appearance, communicating with one another on their Chromebook when the teacher could see it. You know what I mean? Like in real time, see the
Mm.
comments that they were making about the teacher. The teacher was upset. It wound its way to the administration. The administration called the parents. They asked me if I would be willing to create a space where the teacher and the students could, sit and sort of hash it out, and like, what led you to want to do this, and the harm that they had caused. Like, even though it was an adult, we can't say that an adult wasn't harmed, right? We're all human. So talking to the parents and just letting them know that I'm a resource and I'm willing to do this, the parents were like, no.
Oh,
Now, it's a longer story.
yeah, yeah.
And when you talked about, Carice, about vulnerability or at least self reflection, I will say this, that those parents probably could engage in some self reflection themselves. And then they would have been more willing to allow their student to also engage in some self reflection. I gave my whole stump speech, if you will, about RJ and all of that. And while they said, oh, yeah, that sounds great, and, thank you, and all of that, it was basically like, no, thank you. So there really was never any opportunity for any real repair to happen. And it saddened me because these students were actually emboldened. And to
Mm.
me, that was like the regrettable part of it. They were emboldened. So, life has a way of teaching us things, but I feel like some lessons are better learned at an earlier stage than at a later stage. And I feel like in that particular circumstance, those students were not afforded an opportunity to come face to face with some harm that they caused and or didn't have an opportunity to really see the impact of their actions, right? Because we talk a lot about RJ about intent versus impact. Your intention could be to be funny, to crack a joke because you want to be accepted and liked by your peers, but the impact is you cause harm, you hurt somebody's feelings, you embarrass somebody, and what does that look like even if that was not your intention?
Carice, I go back to you because I know like I said, you've been through this path before. Because you have, now a high schooler, did you prepare yourself for like the middle school stage? Like you went through it once. Were you prepared the second time around? Like how do you feel now? Like anything that you call a preparation?
No, I really don't think because like in the household, everybody, like you said, you're the middle child, I'm the youngest. So I think that plays a role, the child's what do you call it, their place in the family on their characteristic. So the high school is very much different from the middle schooler. So this time around, this year, I'm getting all of what Miss Carrington is saying with this particular middle schooler, whereas the high school was very much different. So, I'm just now experiencing what she's saying. So I think it depends on the child. But I do have another question for Miss Carrington as far as the parents. So when you interact with the students, do you find that it's better to actually follow up with the parent and have an actual session with the parent and the child? I know some parents aren't receptive, but do you think that would actually help?
So I still believe that a phone call can accomplish a great many things, right? So I had a session with a group of, again, sorry, seventh grade boys last year that went on for about a month. So
Wow.
we met like once a week for a month, and it was about 11 boys. There was very hurtful, harmful racial component to it. We had, without going very deep into it, we had one group of boys that were mostly identified as white, and we'll say that the other group of boys that mostly identified as black. Now, there were some other mixtures in there, but just to keep the binary, we'll say they mostly identified as white, while the others mostly identified as black. And there had been some hurtful exchanges, some racist language that was used, witnessed. Some of them came to me on the side to tell me exactly who was saying what. And so we sat them down in a restorative setting to give them an opportunity to air their feelings, their grievances, but not just to air feelings and grievances, but, well, okay, this happened. What do we do about this? After we concluded those sessions and the boys, we came back together and said, what do you think about our time together? They were like, I can't believe this is our last session. I wish that we could continue this. And I said, well, I'm not going anywhere. You're going to be in eighth grade next year. I'm still here. You guys know where to find me if you need me. Hopefully you won't need me in this context, but I'm here. And I spoke to some of the parents of the boys in the group, especially one of the boys who seemed to be the nucleus of what was going on. And I had a very transparent conversation with that parent because I have to have hard conversations, right? Not just with students, but I have to have hard conversations with teachers. I have to have hard conversations with parents. And I know that it can be hard. I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine that it's hard to hear something negative about your child that your child was involved in, let alone what your child may have spearheaded. So I had to have a very uncomfortable conversation with several of the parents of the boys in that setting. But I will tell you, they were grateful for it. Some of them said that they saw some behaviors in the home, in some interactions that they had, with their peers. So, yes, sometimes afterwards, the conversation happens after, and sometimes the conversation happens before to see if the parent has an appetite for their child to participate in that setting. As I told you with the girls who were making fun of their teacher, there wasn't an appetite for that. In the one with the 7th grade boys, they are the ones who sought me out and
Mm.
wanted to conduct themselves and wanted to actually solve their problem in a restorative setting. And we know in middle school, when impulses are heightened, they could have chosen any number of ways to resolve their conflict, but they chose a restorative route. And I also
Mm-hmm.
wanted to acknowledge that with their parents and tell them that this was of their own design. I was just there to support them, facilitate, and all of that. So it happens both ways. I've been on either side, either beforehand talking to a parent or afterwards. Hey, your child came in here to talk, and I want to put this on your radar screen for you. So that happens as well.
So does what's the best way? And it really sounds like there may be no best way. Is there any way or best way a parent can prepare themselves for these changes, these social shifts, these emotional shifts when they go from from elementary into middle or just throughout middle school when those changes are taking place? Is there any good way to prepare ourselves?
So many years ago, I used to give tours
Hmm.
where the elementary school families would come and tour the school, and I would take them around the school. And I would say things like, you know, your child. Do not be swayed by whichever middle school happens to be the popular middle school that particular year. So, whatever the popular school of the year might be, I tell parents, don't fall for it. You know your child. If you believe your child would thrive in a smaller environment, then please do yourself and your child a favor and investigate, right? So I tell the parents, you know your child. Please don't fall in with the other parents who try to convince you that your child needs to go to this school. The other thing I will say to parents is these are going to be the 3 years where you question yourself as a parent, that you will say, I don't even recognize who this person is, not you, your child. You will probably say, I don't recognize this person, because they're going to go through so many changes in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and they will test you. But I tell them they will come back to you. I promise you, they will come back. But these are the challenging years. Is there anything that you can do to prepare? Have a support network of other parents who are going through the exact thing, the exact same thing that you're going through, right? Get a squad together so that you can commiserate, so that you can laugh, and know that you're not alone, that it's not like, your child is doing something so out of the ordinary that nobody else is doing it. I guarantee you somebody else's child is doing it. But also know that this is very real to them. We have to remember that, we're adults now, and, we've come through it, and we came through on the other side, maybe scathed, but we've come through it, right? And now it's their turn, and it's very real to them. Their social scene is very real. The breakdown of their friendships are very real to them. And so we have to meet them where they are. We have to meet them with compassion. We have to meet them with some patience, but keep those boundaries in check, please. They are pushing back against the boundaries now, but I'm telling you, they want to know that the boundaries are there. Because the saddest thing that I see are the students who are being raised in homes where there are no boundaries. And I've had
Yeah.
students who came back to me later on in life and said, I wish my parents had put some boundaries in place for me. There
Yeah.
weren't.
I now realize that now because when I look back, and I look at my younger self and I think about, the boundaries that I had in place, And I think about, the things that my mom said that I couldn't do, and the places I said that I couldn't, she said I couldn't go. And I'm just, thinking at the time, like when I think back, it's like I was thinking that she was the worst person ever. I couldn't go, my friends were going. And it's like now when I'm putting boundaries, it's like, oh, I'm turning into my mother. It's like I'm saying things and I can it's like she's saying it. I remember her saying the same things that I'm saying now. And I want to say, you'll know when you get older, because I can vividly remember those rules, those boundaries, those restrictions that I had. And, at the time I was like, oh, she's just the worst person in the world. She doesn't want me to go anywhere. She doesn't want me to have any friends. She doesn't want me to like be around this person. Like it was just, I thought it was hell. you know and you think that it's like your whole social life is crumbling because your parents said no. But when you're older, you are grateful that they said no. And it really it's caring. It really is caring. And sometimes now, I even see some kids that I have grown up with, that are now adults that didn't have those boundaries. And I can tell you it definitely shows. It definitely shows, later
My
on
mother
in life.
told me once I wanted to go someplace and she told me no. And I asked her, well, why can't I go? And, first of all, that was bold,
Right.
but
I was gonna say.
that was bold, but into the breach I went. Um, but she ended up telling me, she said, you need to know that you're not going to get everything that you want in this life. You need to know. And some of our kids really need to hear no because they hear yes so often that
So
when they
much.
actually do hear no, they don't know how to navigate a no. They don't know how to accept a no without completely falling apart,
Right.
right? So that's part of it. The other thing I wanted to add is this: during these years, while you are supporting them and you are creating boundaries and you are being compassionate and you are being patient, I would also say, while you are listening to your child tell you their perspective, that also makes space for another perspective. And what I mean by that is our kids are learning, and some of
Mhm.
our kids are very good at being manipulative because who wants to get in trouble? If I say this, that means I don't get in trouble. If I say that, oh, I'm surely going to get in trouble. So I'm going to go with option A that doesn't get me into trouble, right? And sometimes the tendency can be to accept what they say at face value
Mm.
and not consider that there might be a different perspective at work here and maybe to just explore what else might be at play because self-preservation, like everybody's into self-preservation, especially our young folks. So
Oh yeah.
it keeps me from being getting my phone taken away or punishment or not
Oh
being able to
gosh.
go uptown. I'm with it.
So how can we, as how can parents and caregivers help our students navigate these conflicts that they have with their closest peers or those who used to be their closest peers? Because the friendship circles change. How do we help them do that?
Listen to them, validate their feelings, right? I'm going to say this again, and this might be like the title of your podcast, right? Very real to them, right? So validate their feelings because it's very real to them. Listen to what they have to say. And I think you'll be able to gauge whether or not, maybe this friendship has run its course or maybe it just went off the rails momentarily, right? And they just need some help getting back to what felt natural and felt comfortable. I will tell you that a parent told me about a situation where two friends, they were like best friends, and this is where like the play fighting comes in. That's why we always discourage play fighting. They were play fighting outside on school grounds, and you know what happens in play fighting. Someone hits a little harder than was expected. And if there's a crowd that's around, oh, you gonna take that? You
Oh,
gonna let him hit you like that? You gonna
the
do it?
egging on.
Exactly. So it got broken up and there was a consequence. They were suspended, and the parents were like kind of like mortified because it's like, wait, our boys are friends, like they're friends. And the parents were friends or friendly or had some sort of relationship. And it turns out that one of the parents' siblings, a sister, I believe, is an educator and knew about restorative practices. They came up with an idea that the families would get together and go on a hike. And while they were on the hike, they would employ some of the restorative practices, some of the restorative questions to get them to, think about the harm that they caused, what they could have done differently, what they plan to do in the future. But it was nice to see the families come together to be invested in these two young people. The young people were fine with each other. It's like, yeah, we're friends. Things kind of
Mm.
got a little bit out of hand. And of course, we had to deal with the consequences of that. But I love the idea of the family stepping in and saying, hey, our boys are our friends. Like, why don't we hang out? Why don't we create space for connection and all of that? So I give you that example to say, I wish in some of the conflicts that I encounter, I wish that our families would be willing to reach out and just talk to the other family member, parent, caregiver, whomever it might be. I wish I saw more of that. So if you are situated in that way, like if you are disposed to doing that, I would suggest that. I would recommend that. We don't have enough of that because I
Hmm.
think sometimes, again, going back to what Carice said, the self-reflection, right?
So is RJ something that can take place just for students? Is that something like a practice that can be done with adults as well? Is it something that you do outside of the in-school setting?
Yes. So I like to say, I like to say RJ is for everybody. One of the
Okay.
misconceptions is that RJ, first of all, I will say that there's a popular misconception out there that I would just like to dispel right now, that RJ is for badly behaving Black and Brown students.
Mm.
That is not the case. RJ is for everyone. RJ is for students. RJ is for adults. I will say this: I sit with young people, the students. I have mediated conflicts between students and teachers one on one. And the teachers have probably gotten more out of those sessions than the student, although the student will see the teacher in a new light that,
Hmm.
again, humanizes them and lets them see that, oh, my teacher actually does like me. And maybe I should stop being distracting in class, or maybe I should cool it on the knucklehead, shenanigans that I'm getting
Hmm.
into in the class. It has nothing to do with the teacher not liking me, because that tends to be the fallback position. Oh, Mr. So and so, or oh, Miss So and so, they just don't like me. Right. So when I get a student and a teacher to sit with one another and they can each hear the other's perspective about what's going on with their relationship, that is a beautiful thing. It really.
Mm.
Now, the one place I haven't been as successful with it is between adults. And again, adults have to give up a little bit, right? They've got to be willing to be transparent, have a little bit of vulnerability. I have sat circle with a group at my church. Yes, church folks do get into some stuff.
Mm.
There was a ministry that kind of got off the rails. So we sat circle to, provide a forum for people to be heard. We are also community based. So we have community partners that we work with. So we do that work. We are willing to do that work. We worked with clinical 2 students at Montclair State University who were working with cooperating teachers in the various school districts where they were assigned. And when they weren't in school, we were actually onboarding them to restorative practices so that they can take a different perspective into the classrooms where they were going to be new teachers. So we are willing to go wherever, we are needed. We answer the call when the inquiries come in. We're excited because this is how we grow our initiative. This is how we continue the implementation. But RJ is for everyone.
I love that. I love that because, just having a neutral party that can just come in and have a conversation between, two groups or a group of people to just give a unique perspective. Because sometimes when there's conflict, we're not even looking at certain things. And it sometimes, I guess, makes it harder for us to look at the role that we played in it, right? Because, everybody's thinking they're right in this situation. I did this person did that, but then there's no third party to say, well, you actually, it actually may look like this, or this actually may look like that. So I like that the idea of just having someone come in and just give that analysis and just give that opportunity for just some space for everybody to just see their role and then how they can grow from that. And in every RJ session, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, everybody doesn't, leave as friends, right?
Oh, I was waiting until you were done, but I'm gonna pop in here and say we do not guarantee an outcome,
Mm,
right? What we do create is a space where everybody can be heard and be seen, and if they choose, speak their truth, right? In a space that is safe. We create that safe space where we hope that people would open up enough to share their truth. We do not, just like we can't, determine friendships in middle school, and we do not, I tell the students, I can't make you be friends. That's not my job, right? But I can give you an opportunity to speak to your friend, and I'm here and I will support. We don't guarantee an outcome. We guarantee, I don't even know if I can say guarantee, we provide
hmm
the forum for the conversation to be had. And in that space, some things do happen. Some perspectives shift. People see something that they didn't see before, right? Not guaranteed to walk out as friends. Nope, nope, nope. But maybe something is said there that, allows you to consider a perspective that you were closed off to prior to engaging in that process.
I just love the opportunity that it just gives, and just to know that it's available, that it's available is fantastic. Carice, you have any
And
questions for Sarita? I
yeah,
know I see that you're just about to
I
ask
was
it.
just gonna piggyback and say that just listening now to what Ms. Carrington is saying about the friendships, it's making me again self-reflect, because she's saying sometimes friends have outlived, and if it's no longer serving you, as an adult, how do you navigate that? So, just listening to her now is making me think about that. So it applies to the kids. I'm glad the kids have an opportunity to learn this now, so they can apply it to their adulthood. So
I am too. That's what I said. Oh my gosh, where was this when I was growing up?
Right. Because even as adults, and we have, friendships, and, we think that these friends are going to be our friends forever. We have they feel like the best connections. Oh my gosh, where was this person my whole life? They feel like my bestie now. And then it could be, a matter of months, so that friendship can fizzle after a year. And it's just, where did we go? I mean, do we consider that even a friendship? Was it just for a season? I mean, it makes us think of all these different things, but it's almost like you were saying, like it ran its course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, why would you want to be friends with someone who doesn't see all of you? Right?
right.
It's like you may not understand exactly what that means, but you don't have to beg anybody to be your friend. And so I say, look, take it from an old woman with got gray hairs to prove it. Like, you don't have to beg anybody to be your friend. You will find your people, and your people will embrace you, and they will love you, and they will be your people. And you don't have to explain yourself to them because they will just know. So if this friendship no longer serves you, let it go.
Right.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely.
On that note, is there anything that you want to leave us with? Anything, any services that you have to promote that you want people to know about, that you provide, any, opportunities, any contact information or any events, anything that you want to leave everybody with?
I would love for your listeners, your viewers, to read The Little Book of Restorative Justice in Education. It's about 100 pages. It's like this thin. It's a good read. It is a foundational text for the work that we do. If you'd like to understand a little bit more of where this work and what I'm talking about emanates from, The Little Book of Restorative Justice in Education by Catherine Evans. It's been updated in 2022, but even if you read the 2016 version, perfect. Then I would like to acknowledge Dewana Nicole, the executive director of the Restorative Justice Partnership. She trained me to be a circle keeper, and she is just a wealth of information and knowledge, and just brilliant. I would also like to shout out Greg Lucas of Joy Roots LLC. He is doing the work of restorative justice and equity work, and he is fantastic. You can find him at Joy Roots, the number 3 on Instagram, and check him out. And then lastly, follow Restorative Justice Montclair on Instagram at RJ Montclair. We've got some great posts up there. We're really trying to, push our message out, and we have a fantastic restorative justice teacher who does our communications, and she's just presenting us in a way that is fantastic. I am not on social media. It's a life choice, but I do appear on social media for the purpose of promoting restorative justice. So follow us at RJ Montclair on Instagram.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
everything.
Yes, I'm so humbled to have been asked to be here. Like, I'm cheesing.
Well, your work is fantastic. Your work is fantastic. And I admire everything you do, and your efforts in the community, and just, seeing the product of everything that you do. And, even just hearing the students, everyone raves about the RJ work that you do. And it really is something.
See, my husband's in his office with the door closed, thankfully, because he'd be like, oh, big head, big head. No, super supportive, super supportive, super supportive husband. Couldn't ask for a better partner. But it's just one of those things where you're like, oh, you're making me blush. Like, I appreciate it. It is, like I said, I opened up by saying it's hard work, HARD work, but it's heart work, HEART work. And I think that is hopefully what you're seeing. I hope you're seeing and feeling my heart for this work, and for the students in particular with whom I interact.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Syreeta.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's connect soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.